How is everybody doing tonight? Welcome back to 8 o'clock spot, the only original Gryd Network show here. It is a game show. We have three lovely contestants here. I'm not Bryson Carver, but I'm going to do my best. Tim B, how are you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing good. My Celtics are on their way to the NBA Finals for the 23rd time. And let me tell you, 17 out of 23 championships, I like that. And I'm sorry, this team is too deep, too good to it doesn't matter who we face. I think the Celtics are going to take it home, raise banner 18, have one more banner than the Lakers, which is always a good day.
I like that energy. You know, I'm a Celtics fan too, so you might be feeding into my bias a little bit tonight as well. Mike Guido, how are you doing, man? What is up?
Yeah, I'm doing okay right now. Listen, man, I just aired my podcast, the Bicoastal Baseball Podcast, last night. Me and our good buddy Dalton Brown getting down with that yesterday. Yankees right now playing good. I feel good about that, and that's really all I have to root for right now. So that's really where I'm at now, man.
Hey, you know, it's baseball season for you guys, so
Right.
it's fun. I'm over here lonely in my NFL season, not starting for a long time, trying to struggle to find news and stuff like that. So I'm envious a little bit of you right now. Barry Grant, how are you doing tonight, sir?
My name is Mr. 100K.
Oh,
So,
okay, yeah. So
you have to make
Mr.
sure that you
100K.
you announce that first. Also, the creator of the show, the Snap. There's a lot of names that I go by. I just want to put this out there. The last time that EJ was the host, I won in convincing fashion. So, I expect the same treatment, or else we're gonna have to have a conversation later.
Hey, you got to bring it with your answers and your arguments tonight. If it is your first time coming to the show, let's check out these leaderboards. In first place, we have Barry Grant Jr., one of our panelists tonight, Mike Guido right there at number 2, and Tim B at number 8. So he's got some ground to make up, but regardless, it's going to be a fun time. We're going to be discussing MLB, NBA action. The first round, you know how it goes. 200 points maximum for a great take, 100 points for a good take. Okay take gets you 50 points. A bad take gets you 0 points. Our first question of the night circles around this guy. The title of the show is His Story, Making History. And it's going to take a big night of continual games from Anthony Edwards. But here is the question. What is the likelihood that the Wolves can come back from the 3-0 deficit suffered from the Mavs and make history? Right now it's 3-1. It's going to be a game tonight. It's going to be a fun one, man. We'll start off with Tim B. What's the likelihood of that, and do you think that it ultimately happens?
I don't think it happens. I think that they win tonight and then they end up losing on the road in Dallas. The only thing is, again, it's never been done before. And in my humble opinion, the only way it was going to get done was last year, except for the fact that Tatum rolled his ankle because of Gabe Vincent. That was the best team to potentially snap that streak of, overcoming a 3-0 deficit. And, while Anthony Edwards is a great player, Minnesota is a great team. I don't see it happening. And the fact that, yes, they were down to the Nuggets in the previous series, let's not forget, they were down 3-2. It was only 2 games they needed to win. It wasn't 4 in a row, that type of deal, which is why, again, I think this is a very good team. I think they do make it to 6 games, but at the end of the day, I just think history is on Dallas's side. I think Kyrie knows that Boston's there, and what a great, story for him to get to the NBA Finals and potentially, God forbid, beat the Celtics. So I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, I'm going to give you a good take for that one, Tim B. I think that you're right on the point with regards to just the likelihood of it really happening is slim to none. I would have liked you to go a little bit more in depth on the possibility of the T-Wolves, their players and bringing that intensity, because we know that they can play some really good defense. If they shut down the two best players on Dallas, it could legitimately happen. Passing it off to Mike Guido for the question, is it likely, and can they succeed at coming back from the 3-0 deficit?
Well, it certainly isn't likely. I would say that it's possible, but very, very little. I just don't. I kind of am with Tim here. I just don't see it really happening. I don't think that Minnesota is the team that's going to do it. I think it could eventually happen with some team in the future. I don't think Minnesota is the team to do that. Listen, I said it from the beginning of the playoffs. I thought Minnesota really matched up well with Denver. That was the number 1 rated defensive team in the league. It was probably one of the better defensive teams that I've ever seen in my lifetime, just with their length, their tenacity, and all that stuff, and Anthony Edwards coming into his own. But here's the reality of where we're at now. I mean, all of the pressure is on Minnesota at this point. Both of their top 2 players, Karl Anthony Towns, Anthony Edwards, are not playing great basketball in this series. They're extremely inefficient. It's completely different from what we saw in the last series. And Dallas just seems to have everything going right for them at the moment. They're playing very well defensively. Luka and Kyrie Irving are just, it's not even that they're really being efficient. They are, but they're winning games because they are closing it out. Like, they are hitting shots when it matters. So I don't think that it happens. I think it's possible that Minnesota steals the game tonight, but I mean, I think this game is probably over. This series is probably over in 6 games. I don't know. I don't see it happening. You aren't seeing that same level of defensive play from Minnesota that we've seen early in the playoffs.
Yeah. Mike, I'm going to give you a great take on that one, because you did bring up Anthony Edwards, his struggles, especially behind the arc for this series. The defensive intensity isn't quite there. I feel like down the stretch, Kyrie, Luka have just been way better than the stars for the T-Wolves. So, great take for Mike Guido there. Barry Grant Jr., Mr. 100K, the Snap. I can't remember the other nickname for you, buddy, but go ahead. Do you think that the Wolves can come back from this 3-0 deficit, and how likely, if at all, is it?
No, I don't think they have a chance to come back, and it's not because nobody has done it before. It's the fact that defensively they're a good team. But if you're looking at the games that they've played, it's very, very hard for them offensively to catch a rhythm. Guys are not really scoring that great. And if you're a defensive team and you're putting all of your efforts on the defensive end to be able to try to stop them from scoring points, it puts even more pressure on you offensively to put the ball in the basket. So you're seeing them try to lock up defensively, but they don't have the legs when it matters to be able to make clutch shots. So you saw that in the first few games. This series has been very, very close. Give or take a few possessions here or there, right? So that's the difference between what's going on, is that I just don't think that Minnesota has the legs right now, is that they're trying their best to be able to guard those 2 great players. And it takes a lot. It takes a lot of attention. There's a lot of defensive schematics that they have to do, how you're going to guard them, how you're going to be able to hedge and double over things and switch on screens. That takes a lot out of your team offensively. And that's what I'm seeing. Guys like McDaniels, guys like Conley, like, they got to be hitting timely shots. And we're not seeing that. We saw a lot of that in game 5, but game 4, game 4. But it's one of those things that Karl Anthony Towns as well. He's one of those very, very iffy players. If he's not making any shots, that offense really looks terrible. So, it's just an uphill battle just because of their style of play. And yes, because no team has ever come back from 3-0.
Yeah. Now I'm going to give you a great take, honestly, Barry. I think that your comments about them having to play so effective on defense and that hurting them on the offensive side of the ball is real, and it's evident. Their role players, they haven't been the same this series like they were the series prior. Great take right there for Barry Grant Jr. Let me get back up here to the second round rules. Second round is double the points, everything. So a great take, 400, good take to 200, okay take, 100, and the bad take, 0. It's a Celtics question. So Tim B, you got to bring your game. Has the Celtics road to the finals been too easy, and how much impact, if any, does it have if they ultimately win the championship? Going to start it off with Mike Guido here. It doesn't have an impact if they ultimately win. I think you're muted, Mike.
See, I'm showing respect to my buddy Barry Grant Jr., which it never turns out well for me when I do that. So I don't know why I keep doing that. Anyway, no, I don't think so. I mean, I'm kind of at the point where, like, yeah, the East wasn't as strong this year as we've seen in years past. But if you really look at what Boston needed to go through, Miami has been there before, regardless of where they were in the standings. I don't think you can ever really rule them out. They've made it to the finals as a low seed before. So that I don't think that's an easy opponent. The Cleveland Cavaliers were one of the best defensive teams in the entire league this year. And Donovan Mitchell, I mean, people like to forget it, obviously, but like Donovan Mitchell was maybe having one of the best postseason, playoff runs that we saw this year in these playoffs. Like, he was just on an absolute tear, and they had to get over that as well. And then again, like, I don't think people give Indiana enough credit. Like, yeah, they're not a great defensive team, but they shoot the lights out of the building. Like, they score at an unbelievable rate. So you have to keep this in mind. You're playing one of the best defensive teams in the league. You're playing quite possibly the best offensive team in the league in the Eastern Conference Finals. So no, I don't think so. But here's the thing. Like, I think that just the reason why we're talking about the Celtics like this is because we expected them to be this much better than everybody else anyway. Like, that's really, I think, the big part of this is that we came into the year and they just kept proving it throughout that this was a team that's going to be very good defensively. They have two legitimate stars with Brown and Tatum that can take over games at any point. We expected them to be the top team in the East. They were that. And now I think that the narrative is we're trying to find reasons why we should take credit away from them. I don't think that that's what we should be doing. I think Boston's run is very, very legit.
Yeah, I think you got some good points there, Mike. I'm going to give you a good take on that. 400 points up for Mike Guido. I think that the Celtics, realistically, it was championship or bust anyways for this team. I think that this is their second best start in franchise history, 12-2 in the playoffs thus far. So it's not like they're slouching. It's just that the opponents haven't had their best players. So one of those things, just, it's kind of the luck of the draw. But at the end of the day, they've won the games they needed to, even if there was a little bit of luck, on their side. Over to Barry Grant Jr., how much effect does this have on the championship run if they do, in fact, win, being the Boston Celtics?
I mean, recent memory has told you nothing. I mean, when you think about the Golden State Warriors, remember when Kawhi went down with an ankle injury and it altered the series? Everybody was talking about that. Like, things happen during runs. I'm a Lakers fan, and for me to even defend the Celtics is blasphemy. But I have to, because look, the East has been Swiss cheese all season. It's been Swiss cheese all season. So the fact that they're cruising through the Eastern Conference, no shit. Like, they cruised through the Eastern Conference in the regular season. I was a Lakers fan when I saw that the Lakers beat a team that won 39 games, 42 games, and 38 games on their way to the NBA Finals. So these things happen. Sometimes teams match up well against higher seeds and they lose, and then you get an easier road or guys get hurt. Like, you can't control that. All you can control is your play and how consistent the Celtics have been. And I'm praying to the basketball gods that somebody can be able to stop this team to get another championship. I'm hoping as Kyrie and those Mavs, please, I hope that nobody goes down. I hope everybody stays healthy in the finals, because I can't defend this anymore. But to go back to your point, there's nothing wrong with what happened. It's not the Celtics' fault that guys got hurt. They are beating who's in front of them, and they've beat them handily. So respect to them.
Absolutely. I'm going to give you a good take there, Barry Grant Jr., which gets you up to 400 points, tied with Mike Guido here. Yeah, I think that realistically, like you mentioned, the Kawhi thing with Golden State, the playoffs are there's an arbitrary aspect to it. You don't know what's going to happen any given series, especially when these role players and your stars are coming in with the mentality, this has to be the best I've played all year. They're hustling for every single loose ball. They're doing things. So people are going to get hurt. That's just an aspect of the game. And the Celtics have, I mean, realistically, there's no defending that they've played teams at they're not at their best because of their stars have been out. But even with Tyrese Halliburton, like, he went down and they got as much points or as good of game out of their backup. So it's one of those, it's a give or take kind of a thing. I'll pass it over here for Tim B. This is a Celtics question, so you gotta be the heavy hitter here, Tim. Go ahead.
No, so listen, I couldn't agree with you more. I think that everyone saying that the Celtics road is too easy is absolutely ridiculous to me. And I mean, I'm going to jump back about, 30, 40 years, but still, the 84 Lakers had a 38-win Team Kings, 43-win Mavs, and a 41-win Suns. The 87 Lakers, 37-win Nuggets, 42-win Golden State Warriors, 39-win Supersonics. And the Nuggets last year, I looked at this, had a 42-win team Timberwolves, 45-win Suns, swept a 43-win Lakers, and then played an 8th seed in the NBA Finals. I mean, I understand why everybody wants to say this because, let's face it, Tatum and Brown have never been good in the clutch. And I mean clutch in the final stages of a game, not game 7, not game 6, final stages of a game. Against Indiana, they somehow Jaylen Brown hit that 3 that just ripped the heart out of Indiana, and that was basically the series. They showed up for game 3 and 4, but still, I just look at it like, again, if the Celtics do win, this goes so far for Tatum in his career compared to everybody else in the NBA. I think the only guy that, if the Celtics were to win, that Tatum is going to be competing against for the face of the NBA will be Jokic. That's it. That's the only guy if the Celtics end up winning. And at the end of the day, this team is just too deep, too strong. And because think about it, you take away Tatum, okay, you got Brown. You take away Brown and Tatum, you have Porzingis when he's back. If you don't, you still have Drew Holiday, who won with the Bucks, and Derek White, who, in my opinion, is the smartest player on the Celtics. So I think that this team, even their 6-man, Pritchard, Hauser, sure, they've been off recently, but imagine if that whole team is clicking. Like, you just can't beat them. That's why, honestly, as a Celtics fan, I'm looking at this playoff run going, yeah, I'm bored because I expected to be here, and I couldn't care less if guys are hurt or not. You play who you play. That's how it goes. So, yeah, I think that this will prove to the NBA that, the Celtics are back. The Celtics are a deep team, and that Tatum is going to be competing with Jokic for the face of the NBA. So, yeah, Barry, go C's, baby.
Yeah, I don't know if I completely agree with you on that last little bit about Tatum and being with Joker. I think Luka is definitely in that conversation, especially if he's, in the finals as well. But I'm going to give you a great take, bringing up the stats from past teams, bringing up the Nuggets. I mean, people already have forgotten about the Nuggets' path last year, playing an 8th seed, and that 8th seed was only there because they shot out of their minds to beat the Celtics last year. So, yeah, great takes overall from the panel right here. But now we drop into the MLB, and we got the question of, third round rules real quick. 800 points for a great take. Good take is 400 points. Okay, 200. And you still get 0 for the bad take. Sorry, boys. But the question, do you think the addition of the Negro League statistics in the MLB is an overall positive or negative for the game moving forward? Started off with my guy, Barry Grant Jr., Mr. 100K.
I think that it's a great thing for Major League Baseball. This is my thing, because it's one of those things where they're trying to make good of a bad time in our American history, right? Mm-hmm. Like, we're talking about the dead ball era, guys that were talented enough to play in the major leagues and were literally banned and weren't able to play, and they had to make up their own league. And financial restraints, those cause some of the leagues to kind of fold and falter, and this is why some of the stats are not really that consistent, right? Because the funding for those leagues weren't that great. So we're talking about these great players that really didn't have a great infrastructure to be able to hone their skills and be able to have consistency, and to have those stats now integrated with Major League Baseball. I've heard a lot of people say, "Oh, well, this guy played 3,000 games and Gibson only played." Yeah, but if you look at the circumstances as to why, this is why. So all of those things have to be factored in. And I don't want any asterisk next to it. I don't want anything about that, because there's so many things that you can put asterisks on in baseball. And if you don't have them there, then there's no reason to put this one there as well. So I think that it's just a good thing for the sport. I think it's a good thing to be able to allow kids to understand history a lot more. Inner city kids to be able to know exactly what their history is, and kind of, be able to I guess, like, find some similarities in that. Saying, "Hey, listen, I can be able to play in the major leagues. I didn't know that these guys were here. I didn't know that these stats were legit." So now it brings a different dynamic into baseball, and that's what you want. You want this to become America's pastime again, for people to be able to love baseball again. And I think if you include everybody, include every part of history, I think that's a great step.
Yeah, I'm actually going to give you a great take for that, Barry, because you mention what it means to not only just kids that are African American, and they see these things being included into the game now, but imagine those families of those former players seeing that those players getting honored now, that those stats live on, and their name truly gets etched into history, whereas it wasn't as big of a deal only being, the Negro League instead of being a part of the MLB. I mean, the MLB is such a huge brand, so, and it's still around today. So that's a huge deal, and I like the history aspect of your argument. Jumping over here to Tim B. Do you think that this addition of the stats from the Negro League into the MLB is a big deal? Overall, positive, negative? What are your feelings with this?
So I first of all, I think we can all agree that this is a positive thing, and that that they need to be out there. They need to be told. The story needs to be told of the Negro Leagues, because yes, a lot of these guys, or a good portion of them, could have easily played in Major League Baseball during their prime and didn't have the ability to, due to just people being stupid, for lack of a better word, right?
Yeah.
But if we're going to try to compare, or try to equate the statistics and rewrite the history books, that's where I'm kind of like, listen, I think that there absolutely needs to be a story told, but it was a very different game than Major League Baseball. And just like Major League Baseball had a lot of good players, and had both leagues been integrated, some of those guys wouldn't have been playing in baseball. There was an article written in 2009 by Mark Hauser for Bleacher Report, and part of his disclaimer, was talking about how he wanted guys to vote for Negro League players to get into the Hall of Fame. He was saying, one, the stats from Negro Leagues are incomplete, and even in this recent report, Major League Baseball is saying that 75% of the stats are available. Third, and this is an article in 2009, and the 75 is from just the other day. Third, the stats are almost meaningless compared to Major League stats, since the quality is hard to determine due to the fact that, again, the stats are incomplete. And also, from 1930 to 1950, if you really want to compare the stats of these guys, the batting average in the Negro Leagues was 308 versus the batting average in Major League Baseball at the same time was 269. And a study of 15 Negro League stars, including Roy Campanella, Willie Mays, saw some players hit 319, but then when they got to the majors, it dropped to 271. Now, of course, reading that, you can sit there and say, well, they were past their prime and everything like that. But again, some of these guys joined the major leagues during their prime. And that's why, like, listen, I have no problem with Negro Leagues
10
getting
seconds left, Tim.
recognized, doing something to that effect, but to then rewrite the history book, I think that's where I think that they needed to find another way, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm getting educated right now on this. I'm not a huge follower of baseball, so I'm going to give you a great take, Tim, because you brought the stats, you brought some things that I didn't even know about, the batting averages from the Negro League versus the MLB, and some guys that played in both coming over and certain stuff like that. Of course, some people just have great years sometimes, and so you got to factor that in. But yeah, very interesting discussion and argument. Completely anybody's game right now, but I'm going to drop it off here to Mike Guido. Do you think that these things, these stats being included in the MLB is a good thing overall, or does it negatively affect the game? How do you see it, Mike?
Well, I mean, I think I kind of fall a little bit in between both of these guys. I think I'm kind of, I'm with Tim in a sense of, like, I think we can pretty much all agree that this is more than likely a net good, right? Like, I don't really see anything super duper wrong with this, right? A lot of for the reasons that Barry just said. Like, listen, that under the circumstances, this is the right thing to do in certain in certain aspects. I do think that it is true to point out also that there's a missing part of this as well. Major League Baseball has a pension system and a bunch of benefits that go to their retired players. So a lot of these Negro League players during, obviously, over a course of a span of time, if they played a certain amount of time, those players' families are now going to receive those benefits from Major League Baseball, which I think is a great, great, great thing, which they weren't receiving before the Negro League acknowledgement back in 2020. But here's the thing. Tim brings up a great point. Listen, Negro League stat keeping was a very sporadic and inaccurate thing. I mean, you have incomplete box scores and stuff like that. So it's very hard to determine what these actual numbers are. And I think that's really one of the reasons why a lot of people are having trouble with this, is because, like, how much of this stuff is actually accurate, right? We look at Josh Gibson as, and as great as he was, right? Because this is kind of the way that I see these things, is that, like, me being the baseball junkie that I am, like, Negro League baseball players were in a sense almost mythical, right? Because what we used to see with them is, because since they were separated from Major League Baseball, the stories that were being told about them were, okay, man, did you see Oscar Charleston? Did you see Josh Gibson? How great they would have been if they were to play in the major leagues. Man, he would have hit 700 home runs if you were given the same amount of at-bats as Ty Cobb and those stuff. Like, it would have been, like, they're almost mythical stories. Now, you get to see it on top, like, kind of back to back, where, all right, you see Ty Cobb with his 25 or 3,000 games played, and Josh Gibson was his 600. And now I think that you're going to see a lot more baseball fans putting an asterisk next to them just because of the lack of a sample size. So, again, I think that overall it's a net positive. It does raise a little bit, raise some questions, but overall, like I said, net positive. I think most of this is just the right thing to do. So, like I said, I think I fall kind of in between these guys. It's tough to compare generations anyway. So, again, I don't know that I have really a problem with it at all.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have all persuaded me. Great take, Mike Guido. You're going to go to the final round, all three of you guys. But here's the thing. I didn't know anything about this, so I had to give most of you guys, or all of you guys, a great take because I learned so much about it. One thing is, do they have like a stat about like career batting average and stuff like that? Like field goal percentage for NBA? I assume they have that type of stuff. So
Josh
does this
Gibson
really...
Josh Gibson is now considered the all-time leader in career batting average. It was Ty Cobb. Ty Cobb was hitting 367 overall in his career, and now Josh Gibson was hitting 372. And again, just to expand on my point before, like, this is where I think a lot of the complications of these stats can come from, because Ty Cobb did that in whatever it was, 11,000, 12,000 at bats, and Josh Gibson did it in 2,500. Like it's a large sample size. And I think both of these guys can kind of attest, like, especially with baseball statistics are almost like sacred in their own sport, right? Like people in baseball take statistics very, very seriously. It's a very numbers-based game. Analytics are bred in baseball. So this is an issue. This is why this is a story. Like,
sorry, just a question.
Yeah.
Do they have like advanced analytics that show versus specific? Like, could they come up with some type of advanced analytic that shows them versus certain pitchers, or how would they figure stuff out like that?
So it's funny that you bring that up, because Bill James back in, I forget how long ago, it was probably 1980, 1990, something around those lines, actually did a bit of a calculation in this, where he was taking the numbers that were known from Negro League players and trying to come up with a formula to where he could implement them into Major League stats, so that he could project if everybody had come over at the same time, right? There was no such thing, and everybody was coming over at the same time. Could it spit out a number? And again, it's really tough to kind of put those numbers into perspective, because so many of these numbers are incomplete. A lot of these statistics that they're pulling are ones from newspaper scraps and stuff that they're trying to dig out of the ground, really. So it's really hard to kind of, like, that's kind of, one of the things that I find pretty troubling about, I wouldn't say troubling, but interesting about this, because like, I don't know that I buy that all of these stats are really all that accurate. But again, at the end of the day, if you look bigger picture, really, what does it matter in some sense? Like, if it becomes a net positive for society, then
I'm dropping out. Have a good night. I gotta go.
Oh,
all right,
man.
All right.
Later, BG.
Well, then guess what? Then he won't be
He won't be
Mr. 110,000.